All right, welcome back to another explainer. Today, we're doing something a little different. We are going to take a very, very detailed, highly deliberate look into one of the absolute most fascinating corporate growth stories in the entire global precious metals market. We're talking about Rajesh Exports Limited. Now, if you've ever found yourself wondering how the global gold supply chain actually operates behind the scenes, literally from the raw material in the ground all the way to the shiny display case, well, this is the organization you need to study. We're going to meticulously reverse engineer their success, strictly relying on the hard data and historical records. And we're not going to rush it. We're going to take our time to map out exactly how a company actually achieves this level of global scale. So settle in, let's really explore the anatomy of a true global gold behemoth. I just want you to take a second and let the sheer magnitude of this number sink in. 27 billion US dollars. Or, if we're looking at Indian rupees, a truly staggering 258,308.22 crore. And here's the crazy part. This is not a valuation. No, this was their actual recorded revenue for the year 2021. I wanted to start with this colossal figure right out of the gate to establish the incredibly high stakes of what we're looking at today. Because every single decision, every acquisition, every strategic maneuver we are about to unpack, it was a building block that led straight to this specific, absolutely astronomical financial peak. So here's our roadmap for today's explainer. First, we'll look at the global gold behemoth they are today. Second, we'll trace it all back to their humble garage beginnings. Third, we'll map out their strategic global expansion. And finally, we will be unpacking the financial data. All right, let's jump right into Chapter 1, a global gold behemoth. Before we look at where they came from, we really have to wrap our heads around the sheer scale and scope of what Rajesh Exports actually is today, because it brilliantly illustrates the foundation of their power. See, Rajesh Exports isn't just some company that buys and sells jewelry. Not even close. They are an Indian multinational gold retailer that operates across the entire life cycle of the precious metal. We're talking a massive footprint spanning from step 1, mining, right through to step 2, actually refining the gold, and finally step 3, designing and selling the finished jewelry at the retail level. It's a fully integrated model. By literally controlling steps 1, 2, and 3, they manage to retain incredible leverage and massive margins over the whole global gold ecosystem. To really grasp their footprint in the broader market, let's run through their corporate profile identifiers. They operate as a public company. If you're tracking them on the Bombay Stock Exchange, their ticker is 531500. Over on the National Stock Exchange of India, you'll find them listed as Rajesh Expo. And their ISN, the International Securities Identification Number, is INE 343B01030. I know that's a lot of letters and numbers, but these are the precise, traceable footprints of an organization that maneuvers billions of dollars in capital every single day. But here is the really crucial point, and it's kind of mind-blowing. Look at this highly specific number, 1,409 employees. That was the official count as of March 2019. Now, I want you to mentally contrast that with the $27 billion revenue figure we literally just talked about. It is a surprisingly, almost incredibly lean employee count for a multinational corporation generating that kind of insane wealth. What does that tell us? Well, it tells us that their operations, from the refineries to the retail floors, are hyper-efficient. They're clearly relying heavily on massive-scale infrastructure and optimized processes rather than just throwing manual labor at the problem. Which brings us to Chapter 2, Humble Garage Beginnings. Okay, so now that we understand the massive scale and the extreme efficiency of their current operations, we're going to completely shift gears into an investigative historical deep dive. We are going all the way back to the very start in Bangalore, India. Now, when you dig into historical corporate records, things are rarely perfectly neat, right? So I want to be totally transparent and highlight a little discrepancy in the source data here. The main historical text states the company was founded in 1989 by brothers Rajesh and Prashant Mehta. They were born into a middle-class Jain family, and they started manufacturing in a tiny 10-person shop located literally in their garage in Bangalore. But if you look at the official InfoBox data, it lists the founding date as February 1, 1995. This most likely just represents the difference between when the brothers first rolled up their sleeves in that garage back in '89 versus the official corporate incorporation of the business in '95. Let's trace this chronological climb, and we're going to take our time to really observe the pacing of their growth. In 1989, like we said, it's just a 10-person operation in a garage. Just one single year later, in 1990, the company rapidly expanded and actually opened a retail front. 5 years later, in 1995, boom, we hit that official incorporation date. And then comes a massive milestone. By 2001, the company built a very large manufacturing facility in Bangalore. Just notice how fast they transitioned from a tiny garage footprint to establishing a major dedicated manufacturing hub. They were clearly laying the absolute groundwork for something massive.
Moving right along to Chapter 3, Strategic Global Expansion.
This is the era where the founders, with Rajesh Mehta serving as executive chairman and Prashant Mehta acting as managing director, basically decided that dominating the domestic market just wasn't enough for them. They took their ambitions to the global stage and built a completely new capital foundation. In 2011, they successfully raised $134.9 million. How? By converting foreign currency convertible bonds, which is essentially global debt that converts the equity that they had originally issued back in 2007. Now, this huge injection of capital, achieved through some pretty complex corporate finance mechanics, gave them the heavy monetary ammunition they were going to need to start making serious international waves. And man, did they put that capital to world-shaking use. In 2015, they, and I quote, acquired the largest gold refiner in the world, Valcambi of Balerna, Switzerland, for $400 million. Just take a real second to absorb that. For $400 million, this very same company that started in a tiny Bangalore garage reached all the way across the globe, right into the heart of Europe, to execute a monumental acquisition that fundamentally altered their entire trajectory forever. I want to make absolutely sure you understand exactly what Valcambi represents in the global gold ecosystem. Valcambi isn't just an important player. No, it is literally the largest gold refiner in the entire world, situated in Balerna, Switzerland. By purchasing Valcambi, Rajesh Exports essentially acquired the absolute crown jewel of global gold refining. It permanently locked in the refining step of their integrated model at the absolute maximum global scale. But of course, they didn't just stop at refining. While they were busy dominating the midstream processing of gold over in Switzerland, they continued to aggressively push downstream into retail. The source notes that they are currently executing plans to expand their Shub Jewelers retail stores. This is a brilliant move because it ensures that the gold they mine and the gold they refine at Valcambi has a direct, fully controlled pipeline right to the everyday consumer through their own expanding storefronts. And that brings us to our final section, Chapter 4, Unpacking the Financial Data. Now that we've traced the history and the strategy, prepare yourself for a really meticulous review of the metrics. We are going to look very, very closely at the incredibly dense numbers from 2020 and 2021. First, let's look at their prestige and standing as of 2020. Driven by staggering total revenues of 2.90 trillion rupees that year, Rajesh Exports secured some truly incredible positions on the Fortune rankings. On the Fortune India 500 list, they ranked 7th. Just think about that, top 10 of the entire Indian economy. Furthermore, they broke onto the Fortune Global 500 list, ranking 462nd worldwide. Guys, these are not just vanity metrics. They are undeniable, hard proof of total global corporate dominance. Next, let's process the massive base of this company in 2021. Let's take this slow. Their operating income was $110 million, which is about 1,036.20 crore rupees. Their total assets, a towering $2.4 billion, or 23,472.80 crore. And their total equity sat at $1.2 billion, roughly 11,221.38 crore rupees. I mean, when you see assets and equity in the billions like that, you really start to realize the absolute fortress of value the Mehta brothers have constructed over the decades. And if we isolate the bottom line for 2021, we see a net income of 844.87 crore rupees, which translates to $88 million. This is it. This is the exact finalized bottom line profit generated from their entire global integrated operations, from the raw mines through the massive Valcambi refinery, all the way to the cash registers at the Shub Jewelers retail counters. It is the pure, unfiltered yield of their highly efficient, super lean staffed global machine. Before we wrap up, let's just reground ourselves geographically. Because despite owning the largest refinery in Switzerland and popping up on the Fortune Global 500, their headquarters remains right where this whole story began, Bangalore, India. You can even find their digital home at rajeshexindia.com. Bringing this full circle really emphasizes just how deeply rooted this massive global empire is in that original, humble foundation they laid down back in 1989. Which leaves us with this final, genuinely provocative question. How does a 10-person garage shop become the fully integrated force behind a $27 billion global gold empire? We've taken our time today. We've looked at the hard data, the aggressive acquisitions, the crazy lean efficiency, and that brilliant, fully integrated supply chain. The sheer contrast between their microscopic beginnings and their macroscopic present is nothing short of incredible. So the next time you look at a piece of gold jewelry, think about the immense strategic discipline required to make a leap like that. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and as always, keep questioning the structures behind the massive systems we see every single day.